Dr. Mary Lippitt is a world-renowned expert and speaker in the areas of leadership, strategic thinking, and change implementation. Dr. Lippitt is the developer of the Leadership Spectrum Profile and an award-winning author of Brilliant or Blunder: 6 Ways Leaders Navigate Uncertainty, Opportunity, and Complexity.
Hi and welcome. Today we're here with Dr. Mary Lippitt, and we'll be talking about the missing link in effective leadership. Welcome, Mary.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So the title of our discussion is around the missing link in effective leadership. Can you help us understand what does that mean?
The missing link is our attention to situational awareness. Now, historically, leadership has been focused on the personal aspects. It's been focusing on my style of interaction, communication, or it's been focusing on my skill set. Do I know how to do the job? So the missing link is deciding really what is in the environment that I need to be taking in, understanding. What are the facts that I need to be collecting to make the right call at the right time for the right results? So what we're talking about with situational awareness is really a business acumen or results focused on leadership rather than the more personal focus on leadership. And I think this is becoming more important as the world becomes more dynamic. The world is changing more quickly, so being aware of those changes is really a critical aspect of leadership and one that really has not received the attention that it's due.
So this is a little bit of a shift. So not looking necessarily at our style, but really understanding our environment, critically analyzing our environment, gaining facts. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. It's really interesting. Max Dupree said that the primary job of a leader is to define reality. And what's interesting is that we don't usually even talk about the situations with other individuals. We make the assumption that one person can know everything that's going on and then make the wise call. And what we're talking about with situational awareness is really a major shift from the individual leader, internal focus, but also of the individual leader's assumption that one person can know everything that's going on. There's much more going on than one person can absorb. So the real role of leader is changing from one who is all-knowing and has all the answers to a leadership role that says, I have to ask the right questions and collect all the facts before I jump into a decision. There's a tendency for leaders to rely on habit or past practice, particularly when it's been successful. But the reality is we're in a changing world, and we really have to understand the context, the circumstances that we are confronting, not just some of the personal skill sets that are involved. So it really is a shift in the way we're looking at leadership, but it's a shift that's necessary if we really want to achieve results.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of companies that you've seen that have not been able to do this well?
There are quite a few, actually. What's interesting is we could take a look at a BlackBerry, which actually controlled a large share of the market but didn't adjust to the interest in design. We could look at a Polaroid or a Kodak who did not understand the impact of the Japanese photographic firms. We could look at a Toys R Us or a Sears. Again, the past has been an assumption that you stick to your knitting. You keep doing what you've always done. What we're taking a look at with a situational approach is really the need to continually assess what's going on around me and make those adjustments so that we can actually, thrive. It's interesting that research has shown that 77% of the CEOs think that critical thinking, strategic thinking, situational awareness is the missing link in their workforces, and yet we aren't really learning how to help people become better at situational awareness. We tell them to be, but we don't really have a framework. And what's also interesting is that 8% of the leaders are considered to be strategic. which means not just looking forward. It means someone who looks back and takes a look at what's happened in the past, what have we learned from it, takes a look at what's going on in the future, but also looks at the trends and the issues that are evolving. So the whole concept of leadership as a situational master is something that I think has been missing and is becoming more and more important today to ensure that people make the right call at the right time for the right results.
Well, those companies that you shared with us are great examples of, sadly, companies that did not change with their environment. But is this strategic view of your environment applicable just to the executives, or is this something that should be infused throughout an organization?
Well, it should be infused throughout the organization, because one of the things that we are going to have to recognize is that people at all levels of the organization are making decisions. They have to make trade-offs. We don't have the resources to do everything we want to do. We have probably more work than we we could handle in our work week. So this is something that we really need to help other people understand, and also not to just make the smart decisions within their unit, but also to pass up information. Sometimes people on the front line really get a lot of valuable information, and that needs to go up the chain of command. And, they talk about, downward communication. Some people talk about upward communication. Both of those are necessary. But I would also encourage to have lateral communication. And that is based on what different parts of the organization see. And of course, that's one of the ways to break down silos in organizations, is to start sharing and developing a common understanding of the environment that the organization is facing.
So having that lateral view can help you understand the situation, but is there anything that you would suggest to somebody to help them develop a greater situational view?
Well, I think just understand that we cannot know everything that we really need to know. So that we need to be able to ask questions more than thinking that we have all the answers. And I think the other part is, again, don't rely on habit. There are actually books being printed out and bestsellers right now that are talking about the fact that many of us just continue to do what we've always done, and we think, that we'll have different results, which is a fallacy. If we keep doing what we've always done, we'll get the results we've always gotten. And the challenge today is to get better results. So I think that some awareness about the need to ask questions, I think some awareness about the dangers of habit is very, very important, but also just to be aware and ask the questions of people, what do you see going on? What are the concerns you have right now? And elicit that kind of awareness from others.
Sounds probably easier said than done, but those are really good tips. So asking lots of questions, communicating laterally, being really willing to adapt to your environment, those are all great things. I imagine that when somebody does all of those things, they could get a lot of information. Correct. So prioritizing might be really important at that point.
Correct. Again, the information that we receive will probably be overwhelming. So the question is, how do we set the priorities? And I think that one of the concerns, and sometimes on executive teams or anywhere in an organization, somebody will say, we have to do my issue first, and somebody will say, I have to do someone else's issues first. And there's a battle over that, because the assumption is that what we do first will last for a long time. And in the past, strategic decisions were either 5 years or sometimes even 30 years long. And what we have to recognize with situational perspective is that these change, and we need to pivot so much more rapidly that we can prioritize. And just because we have to do something first, it doesn't mean we won't ever get to what I need and what I think needs to be done first. And again, sometimes with situational awareness, we can find a common ground where we can do both of ours through some creative thinking.
So really, again, being adaptable to your environment is the key.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other thoughts on this missing link and how people can develop within that?
Well, again, I think it is redefining leadership away from some of this personal perspective and recognizing leadership is a discipline. It is a process that we need to apply rather than just thinking about that there's one magic wand that will make me a great leader. And if you look at some of the great leaders that we have celebrated, we have the Stephen Jobs, we have the Bezoses, we have the Welches. They were all operated very differently, but what they had in common was their ability to achieve results. And there's actually a statement that, if you don't master and understand the circumstances, the circumstances can master you. And so if an organization really wants to thrive, they have to stay alert to these situations that are around them.
So what I'm taking away from our conversation today, Mary, is a couple of really big, chunky topics. One, the big one is that missing link is your situation, your environment, understanding what is happening in your environment, having that lateral communication with your teams, asking great questions, and then being willing to adapt to those situations. So really good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.